Welcome to the lab! In this video, I'm going to go over all the things that I've crafted and painted so far. One quick thing before we start, some of what I've hobbied together, I either gave away when I first started, or was a commission, or I gave away as a gift. So for some of this video, all I'll have to rely on is footage and pictures that I took with my phone that I sent to the person when I was done making it. So hopefully that's not too much of a bother, but I'll see what I can get a hold of so that I can actually get some proper pictures or video with my camera. Also, I'm not going to go into super high detail about everything that I've made so far. Some of my earlier projects are just strictly based off of stuff that I learned from other channels. If there is anything in particular that you'd like me to teach you, just leave a comment down below and I'll see what I can do about it. Dungeon tiles. This is my first and only set of dungeon tiles that I've made so far. I wanted to cut my teeth on something easy, so I started making these with a buddy of mine, and I think they turned out alright. These were a lot of fun. This is where I fell in love with the hobby. Every step on making a simple set of tiles totally transforms them in one way or another. You start with the square, pretty obvious. The grid, you already start getting excited about the grid. Then the texturing. That really transforms it. The painting, so easy. It's just so satisfying seeing something go from this bright pink flat material into something that looks like it's actually made out of stone. These are just a blast to make. And because you make a batch, messing up doesn't feel like a burden. This I think is the perfect introduction into terrain crafting. It's just a lot of fun. Next, I decided to make some brick pillars. I was figuring that the tiles that we had made needed to be populated some way, and some scatter terrain would work. It was just simple. Scratch up some foam, stack it, boom, bricks. Paint them. Pretty easy. I think this is a pretty natural progression from the tiles. Put some stuff on it. Boom. Shipping containers. These are technically still not done. I started working on these with a friend of mine, but these were a lot of fun to do. There was just a lot of them to do. But we got to play around with new materials. We took some corrugated paper, which has so much potential to just go in a lot of projects. Then we used Black Magic Crafts spaghetti and put them on the front, and hey, works. Just super brittle. Had a lot of fun weathering these things, but did bust a few chunks of spaghetti off, even when coating them in Mod Podge. Sometimes the simplest brush stroke would snap a twig. Doors and torches. Wanted to try my hand at making a different texture, so I thought wood and some metal were the perfect idea. This wire brush right here is perfect for making wood texture. I guess you could draw it off all by hand, and that would definitely give it a different look. But this just makes it so easy. You separate the planks, you rub it down there, it's just done. One and done. The metal doors are pretty easy. I just cladded some foam and some paper, and that was it. These were pretty simple, but they were also a blast. Used little beads as holders. It was just fun. I'll throw up some other pictures of how these looked when we first made them. They've obviously been put to use quite a bit. This was also my first attempt at some OSL here. This is my buddy's door. It's mine. I think we did all right. Pretty good. The other side has none, so you can either set them up one or the other. Random bits. I think I have a thing for making tiny things, because these random bits were just a blast to make. The torches that I showed you on the doors are just a little bit of toothpick with some hot glue that you kind of pull off and you blow and it separates as it cools down, and you can paint them up. That's how it looks painted. Get the fire. Then I made these scrolls. I took some leftover foam paper that I pulled off the foam that was already curling and made me think about scrolls. So I watered down some craft paint a lot, and I brushed it over it to give it an aged look, and then I rolled it up, put a little piece of string around it, a little dab of hot glue, painted it to look like wax. They're great. Toothpicks as scroll holders. Used a little nail file to put in some edges so that I could get some like handles on them. These books were pretty fun. I printed out some covers and then wrapped that paper around some foam, and then just cut them off. They were kind of stacked like this, just separated them. These swords, these were so fun to come up with. I was looking at a comb and I noticed that the teeth, when sideways, looked exactly like a sword blade. So that made me think about a brush. So I used the brush teeth as the pommel, comb tooth as the sword blade, and then a bit of paper clip as the crossguard. These are perfect for sword minis. They're great. And then I made a bunch of these potion jugs. I would say bottles, but when you put this next to a 25mm, 32mm guy, they're pretty big. This is somebody brewed a whole bowl of something and put it in here. Just 2 different beads, bit of toothpick broken off, makes it look like a cork, and that's it. So up till now, I'd given everything away besides the small bits that I made. These towers, though, holy hell, was this a freaking project. I had the brilliant idea that for the first project I was going to keep for myself, to design a custom building following no tutorial, besides the bricks, with my brand new Proxon that I got. Yay! So I wanted to experiment with it. So I sketched up a rough outline. I think I got the paper around here somewhere, but it's not important. It's just a sketch. Showed the tower. And I bought a copy of Frostgrave. Wanted to use that as an excuse to make terrain, basically. I still haven't really been able to play the game, but it's basically my excuse to make terrain at this moment. And then I got to work. So the skeleton of this structure was pretty easy to make, everything underneath these bricks. I just took some foam board, glued it together into a box. Great, fantastic. I put some pins inside the wooden beams to make them tough so they wouldn't break. Cool. The one thing I wasn't was precise when building this skeleton. A decision that couldn't possibly come back to haunt me. Then I created the wooden stand using the wire brush method. Also okay. Then I put some doors and some steps on. They were pretty fun to make. All of that, pretty simple, went together right. Then I proceeded to make all of the bricks. Piece of advice about bricks. Whatever you think you need to make the project, make more. Make like 3 times the amount. So many that you're sure you're going to have left over for a lifetime. And then it might be enough to actually see you through to the end of a project. So much of this build was stopping progress to go back and make more of the materials that I needed that I had already thought I made plenty of. When I was making these bricks, I had some friends over at the time, and they also wanted to play with my new Proxon. So I set it up, and I showed them how I was making the bricks and the measurements I did, and how to hold the guard and everything. Great, perfect. By the way, thank you for your help, guys. But for everybody else, don't do that. Have one person make all of the bricks, because I don't know if you noticed, they're not the same size. Doesn't matter what you show people, they'll get pretty close, but when you're dealing with miniature work, close isn't good enough. Not that I mind, this looks pretty great, but there was a big problem with all of the random bricks that are slightly off that I had to wedge in tiny little things to cover big gaps that would just look weird in the tower. So yeah, don't do that. Then I made the second mistake in this project. I decided to put on the corner bricks first. Why was that a mistake? Because then I had to take all the bricks we had just made and fit them in between each individual wall area, being super paranoid about leaving gaps on the side. You can see here there's chunks left over, and they're not exact half bricks. That meant I had to take each ending piece, line up a brick, measure, cut, measure, cut, measure, cut. It took hours. I watched through like 4 whole seasons of The Simpsons just putting bricks on this damn building. Oh, and you know how I wasn't precise with the skeleton? Well, that caused each area to have unique different widths from top to bottom, which meant I couldn't just measure those bricks and get a consistent outcome. It was different all over. They look great, and I'm really happy with them. I'm very proud of these. But man, I made this so difficult on myself. Then, I made the roofs. My plan was to make a couple of roofs that looked like they had blue terracotta shingles. I thought, that'd be kind of cool. Figured everything I saw so far that people had made online had wooden shingles. So why not be different? Why not make terracotta shingles? I figured I would do wood shingles eventually, just not now. Wanted to try something new. So I came up with an idea how to get them to look right. An original idea. No, I didn't bother looking up to see if anyone else had done it before. I wanted to try and solve the problem myself. Did it work? Yeah, I think it worked alright. But was it also the worst possible idea of how to make them? Also yes. I'll show you why. Okay, so hindsight is always 20/20. Thinking about it now, to achieve this same look, or at least a similar look, but a little easier, I would take large corrugated paper and then cut it into strips and then layer those strips. And that would probably work just fine. And probably would hold paint better. You can see I've dropped these a couple times, and because I never washed the straws beforehand because I'm dumb, the paint chipped off, which is fine. I can fix that, whatever. Mod Podge. Paint. Done. Instead, what I did to make this was I took 100 pack of straws. I then cut each straw in half, and then cut those halves into like 1 3/4 or 3/4 rather inch sections. Then, in order to get them to stay on this roof, I couldn't just put down glue and stick them there. No, because look, they're too little, too skinny edges. They're not gonna stick. I had to, in order for them not to splay out, because if you take these and smoosh them down, they go wide. I had to take each one of these this many times, twice, and make a little V, like this. Then I had to take my hot glue gun, fill that V with hot glue, and then place it down individually. And then I layered them a whole bunch. And then, of course, when I got to the edges, I had to cut them to fit so that they would fit in between my design. It was a freaking nightmare. These roofs, I thought the bricks were bad. These roofs almost made me give up on this project a couple times. Glad I pushed through. I probably wouldn't be crafting now if I gave up, because I would have given up. So I've kind of resolved to never give up on a project, even if it's super difficult. But this still haunts my nightmares, man. These are a pain. Don't do what I did. Don't use straws like this. If you do, be prepared for a long, monotonous journey. Then, after putting all of that on, I coated them with Mod Podge, and I painted them. Now, I knew I had to use my airbrush in order to get a clean coat, but man, oh man. Whew, that was also a problem. My girlfriend's family is amazing and got me my first airbrush. It's this one actually over here. Hold on. It's a Masters. Nice. Airbrush. Works well. Fantastic. But if you do a little research online, you'll find out that it's notorious for clogging. I didn't know this at the time, and it was one of my first uses of the airbrush, and all I had on me was this blue craft paint right here. Yup, I made the decision to use craft paint in a Masters airbrush as one of my first airbrushing adventures. For like every 10 seconds that I used it, I spent about 30 minutes having to tear the whole entire thing apart, clean it thoroughly, and put it back together in order to maybe prevent a future clog. I kept thinning and thinning and thinning the paint, still would clog. Didn't matter what I did, the pigment in that paint is just too thick for an airbrush. At least the one I have anyways. Maybe I just need to shake it up some. After that, I put the wood color on the roof, gave everything a whole wash, and it was done. Still super proud of these. They took a lot out of me at the time, but I pushed through, and man oh man do they look great. I am so happy with these. Oh, and the one part I don't regret, and that I didn't have a ton of problems with, is I magnetized the roofs. So I can put a guy up there. Then, since I was using Frostgrave as an excuse to make terrain, I decided I should turn some of the bits that I made into treasure tokens. So I took some swords and some potions and I put them inside some foam that I painted to look like rock or bricks and put some snow flocking down. This was my first attempt at making some kind of snow flocking. I used some molding compound, a little bit of Woodland Scenic snow, and some incandescent pigment. I think it turned out alright. I'm pretty happy with these. These are really fun. Well, since I had my treasure tokens all made, I figured it made sense to go ahead and start painting up my warband. So I went out, grabbed a bunch of Reaper minis, and I picked this guy out to paint. Now, I see why some people have trouble with some of Reaper's OG line. I have a couple of Reaper Black minis that are much higher quality, but this guy was straight up missing an entire foot. His hand was deformed, and just several other problems. Here's an example of some of the other minis I had with this, or had problems with this line. There was this girl, this woman. She's not too bad, but if I sneeze on her sword, it bends. Like this sword is super wobbly. Oops. Then there's this guy who is missing his face. He has no face. Don't know if you can get it in there. There's a huge chunk of it missing. That said, this guy was a really fun miniature, and I think it did an alright job for my first go at painting. I definitely learned a lot from it. Also, as you can tell, to cover up the foot issue, I buried the thing in snow. I mean, he's in Frostgrave anyways, right? So. And now we come to the fountain. This was an absolute blast to make. I had this idea from reading that bit in the Frostgrave book about the well of dreams and sorrows to make this magical, mystical fountain. I followed Black Magic Craft's tutorial on how to whip one together, and I came up with this idea of two parts of the fountain pouring out different magic liquid that turned into something that looked a lot like water but wasn't. So on one side we have this magical angel mini crying. I used fishing string and some epoxy that I mixed with this incandescent pigment that I used for the snow and a blue wash to get this shiny, sparkly, tinted liquid here. And on the other side, this was a lot of fun. I mixed some Uhu glue with this super glowing pigment stuff that I have. So when you turn out the lights, and this still glows in the day by the way, but I have some bright lights on it, but when you turn them out, look at that. Just freaking awesome. I love this. So good. I put some in their eyeballs too. You can see their little eyes glowing. Anyways, I just love, I can't praise enough how glowy this pigment is. This stuff's called Lit. You can get it from Culture Hustle. Totally worth it if you need some glowing effects. It's just great. Then I made these guys. I wanted to get something besides gray down on my Frostgrave table, so I came up with the idea to make some marble pillars, except that I wanted to solve this project solo as well without following anybody else's tutorial. Except this time it worked so much better. What I did was I rolled up some corrugated paper, stuffed a couple of circles of foam in them for stability, and then I put foam on either side, weighted one end down with a bolt that's up inside of it. It's hidden underneath the bottom here to give it some weight so it stands. And then I painted them to look like mold lines. This is just paint. My buddy Wes gave me the idea to make the mold lines just an optical illusion. That way I didn't have to ruin the structural stability of the paper. And man, was that a good call. These look so much better for it. Then we come to my first commission. Really proud of this one. I got a commission to do a whole Warhammer table full of mountains. And I thought it would be for a 6x4 foot table. That's what I thought a Warhammer table size was. So I came up with this idea of making mountains, but instead of them being locked into one form, I wanted them to be modular as possible so that they could get the most use. So I came up with this cake layering idea. I took layering cakes and then I put rock texture around them. And this allows you to put them in singular mountain form, or you can kind of mash them together to kind of get one tall mountain, or you can get cool, interesting, different designs from them. Make a little cave, offshoots over here, some kind of cliff that's hanging. Different formations, whatever you want to make out of these. You just take the mountains, and so you got a like 10-inch layer, an 8-inch layer, a 5-inch layer, 3-inch, and so on. I dropped it by like 1.5 inches each time. So they're pretty great. You can put them in different formations where you can just leave one on the table or something. This was a fairly large project. All in all, I think I had about 80 hours into this thing. I started by using an X-Acto knife here to get the rock texture, and I really like that look. I did about 5 sets like this. Then I discovered, because I really needed to speed it up, that you could, I don't think I have one here, I think I took some of the X-Acto ones instead. You know what, I'll cut to a different angle. You'll see what I'm talking about. So for these mountain pieces that I was telling you about, I was taking an X-Acto knife and chipping away each individual spot over and over and over. This is just one of the small pieces. You can imagine how long that took me to do. It was a process. Like I said, I did about 5 different sets of the 5 different layers, the big all the way to the small one, like that. Then I decided the process needed to be sped up. So I took foam, sorry, I just gotta get that out of the way, and I decided that I could get an achievable close look by taking some foam and pinching it to get divots. And if I just did that around, it would look somewhat like foam. So I did this, and you'll see, I'll put up a picture of me just doing 3 different sets of how many pieces that took. I did that this many times! I plucked foam every night for 3 to 5 hours and only did about 3 sets each of those nights until the whole thing was done. I did a total of 10 sets for the customer, and I kept 2 for myself, so I did a total of 12. But man, my fingers felt bruised and beaten up at the end of every night. It was intense. Totally worth it though. I mean, just look at this shot. It is awesome. I don't think I could improve upon this at all, that much anyways. Maybe in a couple years, but I love this. Quick thank you to Knights of Thorn Gaming in Watertown, New York for letting me come in early in order to be able to shoot a couple shots with some of the stuff that I made. And a big thank you to Westley, Nottingham
from Nottingham Miniatures for letting me borrow all of his figures so I could put them all over the terrain and show you what it would look like when it all came together. Links for them both will be in the description below.
Then I made a set of Modular Ruins. Nothing too special about these. This isn't even the full set. I made a whole bunch of different sizes and shapes. But this was the first project that I actually put a basing on one of my terrain pieces and put some sand down there. Not super happy that I just painted the sand to look like stone, but I was ready to be done with the project, so I just slapped a stone paint on it. I may revisit that sometime and make it look like mud or something.
Then I decided to get crazy. So I made this Christmas gift for my cousin this year, and I went totally out of my wheelhouse. He's really into cars and action games and things, so I thought, you know, Mad Max, perfect gift, right? So I did a lot of firsts here. This whole thing is almost firsts. First time kit bashing something together. I took a bunch of Warhammer bits and a Hot Wheels car, and I modified the Hot Wheels car to be magnetic to the base but still removable. And this is also the first time I used grass tufts. First time I tried painting in desert tones. First time I used dry pigments to make something look dusty. Then I also tried to make it a moment of motion that was captured in time. So I have a picture here, it'll show you where the skulls are hanging back as if the car's swinging around like a pair of dice that's tilted because, you know, you're moving the car around a corner. And I've got this smoke coming out of the tires that I made out of cotton to make it look like it was drifting up the road after it cut this guy in half somehow. I am super proud of this. I was both very excited and incredibly heartbroken to give this away, but it was worth it. He absolutely loved it.
And that brings us at last to the second mini I ever painted. This amazing wizard. I just love the sculpts from this company I found. I believe they're called Legend of Signum Games. I tried to make sure that I got every detail painted. Nothing super fancy. He's only the second mini I ever painted, but I had fun filling him in. Took a while, but I absolutely loved it. The different thing I did with this was I used some milliput to sculpt some of the cobblestones down here on this base in order to make it look like he was standing on a street of some kind. I figured that could blend into almost any setting, including Frostgrave. Still haven't been brave enough to just wash a mini. Everything here I also painted and shaded by hand, just like the first mini. It's not super great, but, you know, I'm pretty proud of it. And that takes us up to speed.
And that's my journey so far. It's taken me about a year and a half to be able to make all of this, but as with everyone, this year was kind of a mixed bag. Hope you enjoyed this look into my hobby past. If I was able to even inspire one of you, then I'll consider this video a success. If you did enjoy yourself, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. You know where to find it. And if you want to stick around and see my hobby future, hit that subscribe button. I'm also releasing 2 other videos today. One is going to be me introducing myself and my plans for this channel, and the other one is something that I'm actually currently working on. And until next time, experiment with your hobby. Welcome to the lab. In this video, I'm going to go over... Blah, 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 blah. Slow down. When you're talking to somebody, you talk like this. Right, dumbass? You don't... Blah, 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 blah.